Hello and welcome to the Empowered Couples Podcast, where here you get modern, non-boring relationship advice for you and your partner to communicate like pros, fight smarter, and stay on the same team no matter the challenge that you face. I am one of your hosts, Aaron Freeman.
And I'm Jocelyn Freeman, but you all just know us as the Freemans.
And this episode is about why some partners struggle to apologize. I'm not calling myself out here.
Yes, this one's about you.
And how to get better.
We laugh about that. The truth is, Aaron is really great. He's developed himself. He's gotten better over time at the big apologies, right? After an argument, taking responsibility. You guys know we're big on repair. We have an entire repair process.
I like how you have to define this for me and me not say it myself.
Well, so what's the part you struggle with?
So I do struggle with the little I'm sorries. And as we go through this, I think we want to make sure we're making this differentiation between repair and blips. And if you haven't heard or are not familiar with blip, I mean, it's not groundbreaking.
We talk about it in our book.
But you have these moments in the relationship where there's miscues, there's misunderstanding, communication doesn't land. We actually take an action that's not from the best attitude. Like I can be frustrated and withdrawn, and so the action I take does cause a little disruption. Now, we want to focus on that really today, that's a blip moment versus what we would normally be talking about is repair. And you know us for communication and for repair when something has either been repeating or it's more in the realm of a trauma or you've had a conflict cycle and it's escalated and you've done more damage. These are times where you're in the repair and that I'm sorry follows the steps. As you're all familiar, you need to reflect, take responsibility, you reconnect, then you're reminding of agreements. That's about the time that I'm sorry makes sense.
Yeah.
But we do want to open this up because, as you mentioned, as we started here, I seem to struggle with these blip moments where what you're looking for is me to say, we'll put it in quotes, I'm sorry. And I'll say why, because I realized this today. It feels to me like I'm a kid and that I'm being made wrong and I'm being blamed, basically. Now, I had this realization today when on a session with another couple that for most people, their parents would force them to apologize. And I didn't cause that many disruptions as a kid. I was a good kid, but it was the same for me. If I cause a disruption intentionally or unintentionally from malice or accident, if I do something to another kid and they fall down or I say something and someone gets upset, your parents say, apologize to them. So at least my generation seemed to always be forced to apologize. And it wasn't for me to actually recognize maybe what I did or the impact. It was, this is what is polite so that you can move on. And I can see how I still have that, right? So as a child, say I'm sorry because you did something wrong, number one, and you have to do this to just move on. So now what's ingrained in me? Number one, when you ask me to say I'm sorry, well, I did something wrong and this is something I'm obligated to do to just move on. Okay, I'm sorry. And it's not something that's sufficient for what you're needing in that moment.
And I'll forgive you for spoiling some of the points that we're going to make ahead. No, it's okay. Oh, look, you just said, I'm sorry. You're getting better.
Oh, there we go. All right. I practiced already.
But no, you didn't spoil too much because we're really going to give you several reasons that we see because we get insider information, right? We have done thousands of sessions. We have talked to so many couples over our years doing this that we have a lot of insider information as to why some partners struggle more than others, although it can be both partners in different scenarios. Like it's easier to apologize in these scenarios, but it's harder in these ones. So we're going to give you those reasons. I know you'll relate to at least one.
Well, let me do this because I feel like I didn't storytell enough. So let me just paint the picture where I struggled. Because I want this to be real. So we were giving our daughter a bath, and we may have even said this on
we
two
shared it
podcasts
briefly.
ago. But it is real for me. My intent, right? My intent was it was late. I was trying not to cause a further disruption for our daughter to go to sleep. You were in the bath, giving her a bath. And so I was quiet. Now that startled you when you saw me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, was that in my intent? No. But you said, hey, you startled me. What I said was, or no, sorry, you said you snuck up on me and startled me. And I said, I didn't sneak up on you.
Mm-hmm. In kind of a dismissive tone.
Yeah, and I think you said I had a facial expression, right? It was kind of like
dismissive.
smirk. And it wasn't like against you. It was like, oh, well,
That's
This
ridiculous.
is good because I wasn't sneaking up on you, so I'm not in the wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And that led us down a path where you said, well, you said you struggle with apologies. It might not have been the right thing to say.
Right,
but
I could have said it better.
the point was, hey, I'm just looking for a quick acknowledgement.
Mm-hmm.
Here, I was startled by whether your intent was to do it or not, you were startled.
Yeah.
And now I'm realizing these sort of categories of I'm sorry, I could have just said, oh, yes,
My
sorry
bad.
I startled you.
Mm-hmm.
My bad.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry that it startled you.
And in the session right before this, it was perfect because we were like, guess what, you guys, we're recording a whole episode on this, on how there's actually different types of apologies. People use the words I'm sorry when actually that can mean many different things. I feel we need to expand our language and actually have more terminology around that, because sometimes people struggle with saying I'm sorry when to them I'm sorry means something different than how they actually feel. And so we're going to even give you more words than just I'm sorry for those different categories of apologies. But I want to outline some of the reasons that people struggle, in addition to what Erin shared, which definitely that can be a reason for many people. But also some just struggle to apologize, whether it's a small apology or a big apology, because they didn't grow up in a household where apologies were normalized. So their parents didn't apologize to them. They didn't maybe instill empathy and recognition of how you affected others. And so in a sense, it can just feel foreign, right? And I think it's important that even as parents, we apologize to our children. I mean, the other day, there was an interaction between us and Sky, and you came back, you apologized to her. And you could see it meant so much to her. She needed to hear the simple I'm sorry from Erin from what it was. And then this morning she apologized to us about something, right? And she's 2.5.
She dropped the egg on the carpet.
She dropped the egg on the carpet. And of course, we didn't have to force her to say sorry for that, nor would we expect that. But we want to normalize apologies, big or small, in our household. So some, it wasn't normalized, so it is unfamiliar. A second reason is accountability and apologies, to Erin's point earlier, were either forced or collapsed with punishment and reprimands. So not only am I going to force you to apologize, but I'm going to reprimand you while you do it. And so in a sense, the mind collapses those two experiences, right? Of how it feels to be punished, reprimanded, feel like you're being harshly talked to, and at the same time being forced to apologize. So those experiences can be very much collapsed, and then that doesn't feel very welcoming or positive as an adult to do it, right? Mm-hmm. A third reason is, and this is a tricky one, this is where it can get sticky, but we're going to, again, explain different types of apologies. Sometimes people struggle because they aren't actually sorry for the action they took.
I've done this.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's been times where we have felt that at times for the little things. Like, I'm actually not sorry that I did it that way or said it that way. And so they feel it shouldn't have affected the other person, right? Like, it's ridiculous that I did this seemingly harmless thing and it's affecting you this way. Like, that can happen sometimes, I think, a lot when we don't communicate, right? So it's not even that we outwardly, blatantly did something quote unquote wrong or harshly, but we didn't communicate something and that left the other person in the dark, unsure, right? And so in a sense, it's like, it's something that we didn't do that impacted them in a way that we didn't intend. So we'll talk about that though, because I know you can get stuck there in that thinking, that loop. I think someone even commented on a reel about that, about, well, what if I'm offended that they're offended? And I said, well, then you can just stay in this endless loop of being offended that they're impacted. That's not really going to get you somewhere positive. The next one, and there's just a few more here, and I want to hear some of your remarks, Erin, but they see apologies as admitting guilt or being a bad person. that even apologizing would be admitting a weakness. But here's the thing, truly confident people with high self-esteem, which it's important to distinguish self-esteem from confidence too, because confidence can somewhat be like a projected persona, right? I can outwardly show that I'm successful or I'm a charismatic person. I can walk into a room and talk to anyone, confidence, when inside our self-esteem may not be that high. And here's the thing, self-esteem is knowing that I am a whole person, I'm a complete person, I'm a worthy person, I'm a loved person, even when I make mistakes. And that's really important to know, because when our self-esteem is high, we can apologize. We can do the simple I'm sorries. And it doesn't mean, because this is why the language of apologies is so important, saying simple I'm sorries, my bads, we're going to get to all the ways it can sound, doesn't mean you did a horrible thing and you're a terrible person, right? But people with high self-esteem and who have emotional intelligence are able to recognize that they had some kind of an impact on someone else, even when, here's the other thing, you didn't intend to. So people can get stuck on intention. I didn't intend to. In fact, I did my very best to make you happy in this scenario, whatever it is. Someone even talked about how they did their best to make their partner happy on this trip, but then there was something that disappointed them. And so it's like, my intention was so good. Why did it have to have this impact on you? And those things are different, right? But again, it doesn't mean you're a bad person if the impact you have is different than your intention. This is an interesting nuance, someone said this week, is that they sometimes are hesitant to apologize or kind of open that door because it might mean that they're going to get into further conflict. Like if I say it and then I don't say it right, now you're going to argue with me about my apology, right? So it's like, ooh, if I even attempt to apologize, we're going to just have a further conflict, or I'm going to be guilt tripped. I'm going to be rejected. It's going to be harsh. And that's something, honestly, I saw growing up with different family members, was like harsh reactions to the apologies. And I think that's really important that we don't react harshly to each other. Even if the apology isn't exactly right, we can talk through that. We can work through that. But we don't want to reprimand the apology. That's not going to make it feel safe and like we can talk through it together. It's not going to make me feel like I can come to you and apologize if you're then just going to say something harsh back, guilt trip me, etc., right? Lastly is they can feel wrong, right? So like, again, I think that's a lot of times when it's collapsed with thinking that I'm sorries or apologies means that you're a bad person. So I think that's why the connotation around learning apologies growing up is so important.
Well, I think even further on that one is that I'm not going to apologize when I feel I'm the person that has been wrong.
Yes, say that.
And so that's probably more in the repair conversation. It's what holds people back from initiating repair. Mm-hmm. Because, is it really a 50-50? Probably not, right? There's probably times where another person kind of is more to blame.
80%, 20%.
But in the repair conversation, right, we say, well, look, you're either interested in repair or further disconnection. Mm-hmm. And if you want to be someone that's interested in repair, even if the percentage is way different, if you want to initiate this conversation, lead with where you have responsibility, which is kind of like apologizing for the action that you took. Mm-hmm. And again, a big barrier is going to be, I'm the one that's wronged here. So I'm certainly not going to apologize until they need to go first. Or often it does come across as, well, it's their fault. So what is there for me to apologize for? So we just wanted to add that one. It's probably more in the realm of the repair than the blip here. But just consider it. Is your resistance to having something be a blip, you're holding on to something that it's their fault. Mm-hmm. So, well, I'm not going to apologize because they need to.
So before we go on to further importance of apologies and different versions of I'm sorry, because we need to expand our language around what that really means, we want you to actually really reflect on those reasons we just gave and which 1, 2, maybe 3 apply to you most. And it's important to really recognize that so that it isn't controlling you. It's not blocking you from being able to step into these repair moments, whether it's a small moment, like you said, a blip, or it's a bigger moment that needs repair, because this is well researched, and it's definitely our experience in working with couples, is that what does not get repaired will build into either resentment or disconnect. Big or small things, especially if it's recurring patterns. Now, again, I want to be clear. We're not saying that everyone should be perfect, right? We say the wrong thing sometimes. We use the wrong tone. It's the wrong moment. And it's not that we need to be like bowing down to each other. I'm so sorry. I'm a terrible person. It's not that. But more so, if there's a theme of the way we talk to each other or the way we affect the other person, and we aren't just apologetic or just, again, we're going to give the different versions of it, it's going to make the other person feel like, what, is it just okay for you to treat me anyway? Like you don't value me that much that you can't just give me that simple sorry about that? And so truly, we cannot overstate how important getting better with apologies is for the relationship, again, big or small. Now, as we go into these future points here, we know you're going to want to take notes and also implement this into your relationship. So if you have not been using our Making Up and Moving Forward guide, it's just a must-have, right? It is the way that after big things, after small things, you can open it up, make sure that you guys are repairing. This is especially important when it comes to full-blown arguments. But the Making Up and Moving Forward guide gives you the steps to repair without re-triggering the fight, without rehashing the details, and making sure that both of you actually feel resolved to move forward. So it isn't skewing and changing the way you see each other and feel in the relationship, because that's what happens when you don't repair. So go ahead to the show notes or go to thecouplesexperience.com/guide. You need that /guide. The link's also in the show notes to get that guide. It's just a must-have to open up and be able to talk through together to get better with repair.
So a few more thoughts on apologies. Like many, many areas of life, invitation is always more effective than force. Mm-hmm. If you need a visual, think of that Chinese finger trap game. You try to force your fingers out, it only gets more tension. Like it's harder to get your fingers out. And the way to get your fingers out is actually push it forward. Mm-hmm. And then you gently pull your finger out. And in many, social influence areas, people will just not do something when they feel forced to do it.
So true.
So to force an apology is always going to create additional resistance on the part of your partner. So it's like, well, how do I have an apology be an invitation? Well, we can get into that, but it should be more of an invitation. It should be more expressed as, hey, I know we're disconnected. I know that was a blip, but what I'm needing. So it's a request. It's an invitation. So force is never going to lead to the outcome that you want.
Even a couple sessions today, one of the outcomes from it, and it's interesting how these themes are always correlated. Like every week we notice there's such similar themes. And what both of the women in particular realized was that if their partner doesn't necessarily realize that they aren't repaired, that we, male or female, can go to the other and say, hey, I do want to move beyond this. It could be just a blip. I don't want this to derail our day, etc. I just think I need a moment to talk through it, right? Or I am needing just an apology or a full-blown repair conversation. So you're exactly right. Like just bringing it to our partner's attention as a request rather than forcing it. The other thing to realize about apologies is that when you take the step to offer a genuine apology, and it's not just like, fine, I'm sorry, can we move on? Because that kind of just cancels it out. When you have the, come on, can we just move on attitude? It doesn't make the partner feel great. So when you do offer a genuine apology, It shows that you're more committed to coming back to love and connection and repairing than being right about your position or your perspective. Because again, you might think from your perspective, it was harmless and you didn't mean to, and it shouldn't be that big of a deal. Okay, that's coming from where you are. And your partner's another person in another position, and it may have had an unintentional impact. So again, apologies don't mean you're right, I'm a terrible person, I'm repenting, right? So again, you have to reframe what I'm sorry can mean at different times. So
And it's also going to cancel it out if it's, oh, I'm sorry, but I would have never done that if you didn't do this.
true.
So casting the blame on them for the action you took is going to cancel out, your apology as well.
Here's the other thing. Apologies, big or small, should not be on just one person. If it's 90% approximately always on one person and the other person rarely, if ever, apologizes, or it has to be this long drawn out thing to finally get an apology out of them, it's not going to be a recipe for a lot of respect and preventing resentment. So it's something that even if you aren't great at this, it's a muscle you've got to strengthen for the sake of your relationship and your partner being able to, frankly, respect you. Like, how do we respect someone that doesn't apologize, right? It's hard.
Well, now you might take that further and just say take responsibility. So we can add a piece here on the repair side. And we invite you all to get more effective at reflecting on what your partner was impacted by and being responsible for the action you took. And then that's something that you can apologize for. And our invitation is to do that faster. So again, the blip moments, maybe not this particular point, but overall with your repair, getting to this apology that includes responsibility, let's shorten that time.
So we want to go into now like the language of apologies, because I truly feel, and I noticed this so much recently, that just the two words I'm sorry can mean many different things. We actually need to expand our vocabulary around that. So I want to start with this one actually, because I know when we listed those examples, some of you got caught up in the one where we said, sometimes you or your partner aren't actually sorry for the behavior, right? And so you think that your partner is requesting for you to admit that the thing you did was wrong. And maybe you don't. Maybe you do feel like it was objectively neutral or harmless, etc. So in that case, a good way to kind of prepare yourself for a more genuine apology is to actually ask them, what impacted you most? I want to understand from your perspective, because maybe you don't realize what actually affected them and you aren't able to therefore empathize and apologize to them because you don't understand. And so it's like, okay, I need to understand the impact on you so that I can in the future be aware of that behavior, right? I didn't mean harm this time, but I want to be aware of it moving forward. Another thing that I realize is sometimes, and I think this was us this morning, we had a little bit of an interaction, right? It was something we needed a quick repair from. And sometimes we can just be like, I'm sorry it got to this point.
Well, I want to be clear, not
Sure.
quick repair, just quick something.
Yeah,
something in
quick.
the realm of, and I'm sorry, an
Yes.
acknowledgement.
An acknowledgement, exactly. And so what I came to you and said was, hey, I'm sorry that it got to that point, right? I wouldn't have wanted us to have that interaction that way. So it's not that I necessarily felt compelled to apologize for a specific behavior, but more so just like, I'm sorry we got to that point. I'm sorry this occurred this morning. Some other things that expand our language around I'm sorry is, and I said this to you in the bath scenario, Erin, is that sometimes even just a sorry, my bad. You know, again, it's not like you did a terrible thing. I didn't think that you were truly sneaking up on me in the bathroom. It's more so of just like, oh, sorry, my bad. Like I wouldn't have wanted to startle you. Because sometimes that's what we're saying, right? Is just like, I wouldn't have wanted you to feel that way. So sorry, my bad. Another thing is just, hey, I would have never wanted to affect you that way. I'll be cognizant moving forward. You know, now that I know when I do this, it affects you, I'll totally be aware of it moving forward. And then sometimes though, true remorse is needed. So just a my bad or I'm sorry it got to this point isn't specific enough for your partner. And we did a modeling example of this in a reel this week because we don't want to just use the words I'm sorry as a blanket statement when something specific did impact your partner. Or here's the thing that we were trying to show is that I need to know that you know what behavior really affected me. And so when you just say an I'm sorry, that could read to me like you're just sorry I got upset. You're sorry that this ruined the morning. But we need to sometimes identify like what's the action that I took and so that I can change it in the future. So sometimes we do need to express some degree of either remorse or awareness for the thing we did. So a quick example of this that really hits home, we've done another post on this, is acknowledging when we get defensive, right? So it's not, oh, I'm a terrible person for getting defensive, but more so of like, hey, I know I got defensive. I didn't hear you out. I really do want to understand you. Can you share that again? So it's acknowledging I got defensive. That shows I'm aware, and self-awareness is so important. Like in order for me to truly move on, it helps me when I know that you know. So we hope that this was clarifying for you. It really is important that you two get better at your apologies, at your I'm sorries, whether they're big or they're small. Now, of course, this isn't a full repair process. As Erin was distinguishing earlier on, if it is a bigger rupture or an argument where more was said or done, brought up, discussed, then there are more steps to our repair process that we have laid out in the Making Up and Moving Forward guide. Highly recommend getting that. This is really about how we need to get better with the simple acknowledgement that we don't want our partner to feel a certain way. Hey, it was my bad. Hey, I wouldn't have wanted it to affect you that way. Here's where I see I can be better. And not have it be this battle to get the apology and the I'm sorry. That's exhausting. So we really hope that this was enlightening. Make sure that you listen again if needed to identify why you might struggle to apologize, so you have awareness of where you can shift your perspective on what I'm sorry's actually mean and expand your language around when you do say I'm sorry, so it feels more genuine to your partner. So we really hope this was helpful for you. If you're new here, make sure you hit the subscribe button so that you can hear past and future episodes. It also helps us so much if you give us a rating on the platform. We'd love it if you would give us 5 stars and write a sentence or two about why you enjoy it. And then again, make sure you dive into our resources. Listening to the podcast is one thing, but we have many guides, challenges, and more that have you get into action. So go ahead, get the Making Up and Moving Forward guide among our other resources. And with that, we'll talk to you guys on the next episode.